welcome to another edition of Montpelier Connection, a public service of BCTV. I'm Representative Mike Marwicki from the Wyndham 5 District of Putney, Dummerston, Westminster, and we are broadcasting from the State House, getting to the end of the session. Today's guest is Representative David Deen, the Dean of the House, as I like to call him, and also the chair of the Fish, Water Resources and Wildlife Committee, right?
Right.
Okay, got it right. Welcome, David.
Well, thank you for having me. This is always these opportunities are always important for people to understand what we're working on up here, and sometimes how things get done. I've had those conversations with you.
Especially this time of year. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Yes. This time of year, we move from having a stately, deliberative process to one that is at hyperspeed. We know we're coming to the end of the session. The Speaker of the House just announced on the floor, Mike and I just left the floor of the House, that plan for us to be here next Monday, which is unusual. We're normally only up here 4 days a week. And that the expectation is that we will be finished next Friday. Not this coming Friday, but Friday, May 7th. And that if you have legislation you're concerned about that's over in the Senate, you should be working with your counterparts in the other body in order to see that that legislation gets acted on, gets to the floor of the Senate, and gets passed by the Senate. And the reason that's important right now is that if we are going to adjourn May 7th, and there are differences between the House-passed version of a bill and a Senate-passed version of the same bill, a committee of conference has to be appointed in order to resolve the differences between the two bodies. Those meetings are an add-on to everything else that we're doing up here normally, and so that's why the hyperactivity, that people have more actually to do. Once the Committee of Conference, which is composed of 3 members of the House, 3 members of the Senate, reaches agreement on one version of the agreement then has to go back to the Senate and be approved, and it has to go back to the House to be approved. And all actions on the floor of the House and Senate have a delay time of at least 1 day. Sometimes you can suspend the rules to make things move faster, but it normally takes waiting 1 day from the time those committees of conference agree before the body can work on the bill and vote on the bill. What it means is if you get a late passed bill that, let's say, passes out the end of this week, there may not be time for a committee of conference to reach agreement to then bring the reports back to their respective body for a vote on that agreement that's reached in the committee of conference. So we really are right down to the end. One other piece of information is that this is the second year of the biennium. And that means any legislation that does not pass by the time we adjourn this year is dead. It no longer exists and has to be reintroduced in the next biennium. This is the election year. All of us will be up for re-election, and the membership and nature of both the House and Senate will change dramatically next year. So what we've been considering this year, if we don't get it passed, you have to start at ground zero again next year. So it's important that we finish our work, do it in the professional manner that we approach virtually everything that goes on up here, and to get it done quickly so that we have time for the House and Senate to pass those final versions of bills. Probably a whole lot more than people may have wanted to know, But that's how it works up here, and that's what I was trying to explain.
Well, I appreciate that, David, because one of the things we're trying to do is share both the information and the process here. And you mentioned a couple of things. One of them is that bills have to be coordinated between House and Senate, and if there are differences. And you talked about adjournment, too. When we passed our big bill, the last piece, or I should say the last iteration of the Challenges for Change bill, the House version had a stipulation that we would not adjourn sine die in 2 weeks, but we would hold that open. We would not close the door completely on this session until July. My understanding is the Senate is not in concurrence with that. Do you have an idea of where that's at?
Well, it is not unusual for the legislature to reserve 1 day beyond final adjournment to deal with things like gubernatorial vetoes, and in this case, the fairly complex challenges bill that has a lot of moving pieces that, quite honestly, just haven't settled out yet, so everybody gets to look at them in detail. So it's not unusual for us to retain 1 additional day after the legislature adjourns. In this case, it was for the challenges bill. Normally, if we adjourn in May, we are back here to deal with vetoes in June. And that's happened several times in our recent experience. This putting it off until July is of particular concern to the Senate. And I do not think that we are going to see that portion of the bill come back. That said, that is exactly the kind of difference that goes to a committee of conference that I explained before. So I don't think the Senate is going to agree to that. They're probably going to force us to resolve challenges prior to adjournment, May 7th or 8th, whenever it is.
Now, what happens on a committee of conference? I'm assuming, I haven't been on one, I'm assuming you have, especially as a chair. Is there a process? Is everybody on every committee on that? The committees of jurisdiction? Is it a select committee?
The members who serve on committees of conference are selected by the Speaker of the House, and in the Senate, the Committee on Committees, which is a 3-member body, but serves the same function as the Speaker of the House. Normally, unless there is a much broader and larger issue, say the budget, or in this case challenges, let's stay with challenges. Normally, in a small, narrow bill that came out of my committee, went across to the Senate, they passed a different version, the Speaker looks to me, as chair of the committee, to recommend the names of who will serve on that committee of conference. When you have a larger bill, such as challenges, that sweeps across so many different parts of state government, those appointees come from the Speaker and or the Committee on Committees. The committee chairs don't really have a lot to do with those appointments. Once those committees are established, they're like any other committee in the body. They have only one topic, and that is the topic of the bill. But the chair is if it's a House bill, the committee is chaired by the chair of the Senate Conference Committee. If it's a Senate bill, it is chaired by the House Conference Committee. The committee meets at the call of the chair. All of the rules of procedure, which I've spoken to folks before, the rules of procedure, which is sort of my bailiwick, are the same for a committee of conference as it is for a standing committee in the House or Senate. And they have full powers. They can bring witnesses in. They can modify the bill in any way they see fit. one important restriction, and that is germaneness, whether or not an issue is germane to the bill. Let's just say we were talking about controlling docks on the Connecticut River. You have to stay focused on that issue. You cannot bring into it a bill that would change, or an idea that would change the health and welfare program in the state of Vermont. It has to be germane to the discussion in front of the committee. So rules of procedure are the same. They can get witnesses in, but they can only talk about those issues that are in the bills and those issues that are different. You can't just be adding things into a committee of conference report. Some people have tried it. Sometimes they are successful. Most times they are not. And it doesn't matter the party. Someone will object to the form of the committee of conference report, and that's a challenge of whether or not a provision is germane to that committee of conference report. If it's found that it's not germane, the report has to go back to the committee of conference. I have also seen where committee of conference agrees, they bring it to the Senate votes it, they bring it to the House turns it down.
And
You're back to the committee of conference.
at that point in time, no amendments can be offered, right? There's only an up or down vote that's
Correct.
allowed?
Yes, if it's on the floor for approval, you have to approve the language of the committee of conference report. No amendments are possible, nor can you strike anything, which is in essence an amendment. So it is a different process a little bit, but as a committee, the chair gets to call witnesses, gets to call the meeting. I have seen, we also do play and have fun and games up here. I have seen chairs not call the committee together until everybody has agreed to a provision that the chair wants. And everybody just sort of hangs out waiting for the committee to meet, but it's never called to meet. So there are all kinds of maneuvers, if you will, that can occur. But once it's back on the floor, straight up or down vote, period. You can't modify the report at all.
Now, this has been, I feel, a particularly grueling session. We've had some, the circumstances that we started the session with, most especially because of the economy, have really made our job that much more challenging. And I wonder if you could share a couple of highlights from both from your committee and from the general floor actions of the House that you think will be notable about this session.
Well, actually, I think the first thing I might share actually does not involve us as legislators. There was a situation that evolved in Putney that the Green Mountain Regatta, which has been going on for the past 18 years, was suddenly denied access to the Fish and Wildlife launch point in Dummerston, which is the site that they use as sort of headquarters for the regatta and where the finish lines are for the regatta, and people store their boats and they use the cornfield. Thank you to the landowner for making that available. And all of a sudden, they were told last year, you can't use this anymore. The rules don't allow for it. Well, I, of course, got immediately involved, as did you, and what I did was go to Brian Ames, who is one of our constituents in Putney, who happens to be the chair of the Fish and Wildlife Board, the body that makes the rules for use at these Fish and Wildlife access points. So Brian followed through, and last Thursday, I believe it was, the Fish and Wildlife Board took its final vote on changing the rules, and the rules will now allow for the regatta to be held at the Dummerston Boat Launch. They're still going to have to get their permit, but that's what they've been doing for 18 years. And this is a situation where just legislative notice that there's a problem, even though it doesn't take passage of a bill, we can help work out situations that people are facing at the local level.
And I want to make note that this is something that you have taken upon yourself to especially raise an awareness. But I think you make a good point. In my other work in human services in Putney, I've been doing this for 10 years with Putney Family Services, and before I got in the legislature, I used to have to wait in line to get phone calls answered. Now, when constituents call me with a concern, I call a commissioner or somebody lower down the chain. I tend to get a phone call back, usually the same day. And I mention all this because I encourage people to call us. When you have a concern, call us, call your legislator. That's what we're here for. We have an office that we can use for the betterment of our constituents, and I think that's one of the benefits that we can offer. You have access to us, and if you've got a concern that you think we can help with, give us a call.
Yeah, what's interesting is that Brian Ames, who chairs the Fish and Wildlife Board, and I go to the same place to drink coffee in the morning, on our way to work. And he and I work this out over coffee over a couple of mornings. And that too is one of the things about legislators being in the local community. You see us around, you see us at the grocery store or the co-op or the coffee spots or whatever. As long as the conversations are brief and not interfering with what it is we're trying to do, like I stop and get coffee, I'm on my way to work. It usually means I'm meeting with my boss. I'll spend 5 minutes. Don't take a half hour of our time, but I'll spend 5 minutes to get hold of an issue and then begin to follow up. So it can happen lots of ways. You can call us up, you can email us, or if you see us down street, please feel free to talk to us.
That was a particular concern to our area that's come out within the purview of what you're doing in your committee. Any other bills that would affect the whole state in regards to, especially our water?
Yeah, our major piece of legislation this year is, and I don't want to get too far into the bushes here, but when a water body is impaired, meaning it does not meet the water quality standards, the state is required to come up with a plan to address the reason the water body is impaired. We have been working for 6 years now with the administration and with non-governmental organizations to clean up Lake Champlain. Lake Champlain is an impaired water body for phosphorus, and phosphorus is what sets off all of the plant growth, whether it's invasive or native. It sets off the blue-green algae that people, I'm sure, have heard news reports about that can in fact be toxic both to animals and humans. And this occurs because there's too much phosphorus in the water. Over the 6 years that the legislature has been working on this, we have gotten a performance audit done in terms of the money that has been spent on Lake Champlain. From that performance audit, we requested or required of the administration a new implementation plan for cleaning up the lake. We passed out of the House a couple of months ago a bill that made the necessary legislative changes in the law in order to be able to facilitate the cleanup of Lake Champlain. But when we do something up here, we can't and don't pass laws that say you can do this in Lake Champlain, you can only do it there. What we do is pass laws that have general applicability, so the provisions of the Lake Champlain cleanup bill actually apply to all the waters of the state, and down our way, of course, that means the Connecticut River watershed. We're going to increase flexibility so farmers can do more under the state and federal programs that will help them address non-point source pollution. And agriculture is a major source of that pollution. We understand here at the legislature that people who farm the land want to be good stewards of the waters of our state. But if you take land out of production, you are in fact costing the farmers money, and agriculture, as all of us know, is marginal at best. So we're making more monies available, we're making it more flexible for agriculture. We are giving the agency a broader reach of control for things like stream alterations. One of the things that moves phosphorus into Lake Champlain and nitrogen into the Connecticut River is erosion. And erosion is can be the result of alterations that people do to streams along their own land. And so we have increased jurisdiction in terms of stream alterations. So those are some of the provisions. I just learned this morning that although we passed the bill 2 months ago, we've been waiting for the Senate, waiting for the Senate, waiting for the Senate. They have now voted, as of this morning, to vote it out of committee, and it will be up for floor action in 2 days. So it's a good morning.
Good. Well,
for that bill.
It's nice when our work in the House is recognized by the other body too.
Yep.
We've got a few minutes left here, David. Looking ahead, there's still more work to do. We're not going to get to it this year, but what are some of the things that you think are important in terms of protecting our environment here in Vermont?
Well, I was asked by one of the business leaders in the Lake Champlain watershed that very question. And quite honestly, we have to be willing to put our money where our mouth is. We say we want clean water, and that requires stewardship on the part of agricultural activities along the waterways. It requires activities where you have what are called impervious surfaces, which means surfaces that can no longer absorb water because they're macadam or cement or steel or a roof or whatever. And those programs that stop this non-point source pollution that goes into the waters of the body are grossly underfunded. Both in terms of assisting people understand what their activities, the impact of those activities on the waters of the state, and as I mentioned in the agricultural example, if we ask them to step back from the edge of the water in order to protect the water in terms of growing crops, all of that land that is taken out of production has a real economic impact on the livelihood of the farmer. And we have to be willing to assist them if we want clean water in order to create those setbacks, buffers. And we don't have enough money. The feds have sort of stepped up to the plate, but every federal dollar requires some match at the state and local level, and we are not putting up enough match money here in the state. So we need some financial resources. I have some ideas how to get at that, and we'll have to wait until next year in order to be able to address it.
Well, thank you for your work this year. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your ongoing commitment to helping keep Vermont's environment as beautiful as it is.
Well, I thank you for doing these programs so that people get some idea of what the work is, how it moves forward up here, and that there are always issues that are still need to be addressed into the future.
And I would remind people, even though we hope to be adjourned in a few weeks, we are still your representatives. If there's a question you have, feel free to contact us. Our contact information will be run on the screen after the interview part of this is finished. But we do want to hear from you, and we want to make sure you feel that you're being heard and that we are on the job working for you. So until next time, this is Mike Merwicki from the State House with David Deen. Thanks for watching.